Conceive, believe, achieve. Shut the fuck up.
Britain, Britain, Britain. Home of Morris dancing, the chicken parmo, and questionable referendum results. But what of the fighters of Britain? The brave lads and lasses who flew in the Union Jack on the sport's biggest stage. This episode looks at the best that Blighty has given the UFC and beyond. Welcome to INC, and these are the 5 greatest British MMA fighters. Number 5. Paul Daley. Paul Daley is one of British MMA's most controversial figures, but for all his trash talk outside the cage, there's no denying the Knotsman's skill and aggression inside. After serving as a recon driver for the British military, Daley spent his early career with the British promotion Cage Rage, before successful spells in MFC, Strikeforce and Elite XC. When Elite XC folded in 2008, Daley signed with the UFC, and after winning his first 2 fights, took on Ultimate Fighter alumni Josh Koscheck with a welterweight title shot on the line. Daley was out-wrestled throughout the fight, eventually losing by unanimous decision, but it was his actions after the fight that would ultimately define his career.
Oh! Daley punches Koscheck at the end of the fight, and look at Dan Mergliotta.
I don't care if he fights in every show all over the world and becomes the best, and everybody thinks he's the pound for pound best in the world. He will never fight in the UFC ever again. Done.
After being blacklisted by the UFC, Daley resurfaced in Strikeforce once again, and after a knockout win over Scott Smith, took on Nick Diaz for the company's welterweight title, losing what's widely considered the greatest fight in the promotion's history. Now competing with Bellator, Daley continues to be defined by high aggression and highlight reel knockouts, currently sitting on a record of 40 wins and 15 losses. Number 4. Ross Pearson. Sunderland's Ross Pearson may not have had the most coveted career, but numbers only tell half the story of one of the UFC's best scrappers. After competing in local promotions with an 8-3 record, Pearson first entered the mainstream competing in the UFC reality show The Ultimate Fighter. Billed as UK vs USA, Pearson was one of the highlights of the British team, beating AJ Wen, Richie Whitson and Jason Dent before claiming the lightweight crown with a decision win over Andre Winner. For the next 8 years, Pearson would earn a reputation as one of the division's most exciting fighters, twice winning Fight of the Night honours and showing a willingness to step in on short notice against many of the sport's greats. The approach has seen Pearson claim a number of high-profile scalps, including Dennis Seaver, Paul Felder, and lightweight title challenger Gray Maynard at Fight Night 47.
Down goes Maynard! Ross Pearson looking to finish the fight! That'll do it! Ross Pearson!
4 straight losses had seen Pearson's star wane in recent years, but his aggression, heart, and willingness to take on all comers have cemented his place as a figurehead of British mixed martial arts. Number 3. Brad Pickett. British fighters have long been trademarked for an inability to handle the ground, a reputation Brad Pickett quashed during his 13 years in the sport. Like Daley, Pickett made his name competing in Cage Rage, winning the company's featherweight title with 10 of his 17 wins coming by submission. The run of form saw Pickett attract the attention of WEC, and after a win over Kyle Dietz, took on rising star Demetrius Johnson at WEC 48. There, Pickett would put on a wrestling clinic, winning the fight by unanimous decision and becoming one of just 2 men ever to beat the future Hall of Famer. When WEC merged with the UFC, Pickett's highlight reel continued, claiming bonuses in 6 of his first 8 fights, and with UFC president Dana White describing him as one of his all-time favourite fighters. After losing to Marlon Vera at Fight Night 107, Pickett retired in 2017, ending his career with 25 wins, 14 losses, and a probable spell on the X Factor.
I believe I can fly.
Ryan, I don't believe I can fly. Well, I can't sing, to be honest, that's why I'm fighting.
Number 2. Dan Hardy. Much like local hero Robin Hood, Nottingham's Dan Hardy was a swashbuckling figure, using cunning and strong ring craft to carry him all the way to UFC title contention. Unlike his compatriots, Hardy's MMA education came from the heart of China, studying with Shaolin monks for several months where he developed skills in taekwondo, karate and judo among others. After returning to England in 2004, Hardy made the name for himself in British regional promotions, winning the Cage Warriors welterweight title before joining the UFC in 2008. After a 7-fight winning streak, Hardy made UFC history when a win over Mike Swick at UFC 105 saw him earn a title shot at welterweight champion George St. Pierre, becoming the first Brit ever to fight for the title at the sport's biggest stage. Despite losing the fight, Hardy earned accolades with his resilience against the Canadian legend, fighting off multiple submission attempts before succumbing to a unanimous decision. Hardy went 2-3 after the fight, before being diagnosed with a heart defect after his win over Amir Sadola. Despite his retirement, Hardy remains an active part of the UFC, working as a colour commentator and analyst, and bringing his intelligence, ringcraft and excitement into each of his MMA broadcasts. And at number 1, Michael Bisping. The legacy of Michael the Count Bisping is much discussed by MMA fans, but one thing can't be denied is he stands as one of British MMA's greatest pioneers. Bisping first came to the public eye in 2006, when he became the first man outside North America to compete on The Ultimate Fighter, soon winning over American audiences with his British charm and modesty.
F*** off! I'm telling you, I'll smash that camera over your f***ing head.
Over the next 10 years, Bisping would become a perennial figure in the middleweight top 10, taking on many of the sport's all-time greats and trademarked for his resilience and high-pressure stand-up. Until 2017, Bisping held the accolade of never losing 2 straight fights, allowing him to break the record for the most wins in UFC history. After a reputation as a gatekeeper, Bisping finally came of age in 2016, beating MMA legend Anderson Silva before accepting a short-notice title fight with middleweight champion Luke Rockhold. Having beat Bisping 2 years previous, Rockhold remained confident of a successful defence against the Count. But, as history has always shown, never underestimate the British. Bisping's win was considered just a reward for an epic career at the sport's top level, and with the Count set to retire later this year, does so with his place secured as Britain's greatest MMA fighter.
I foresee for my future 1, 2, 3, 10 drinks tonight. A very, very sore head tomorrow. Nothing to do with Luke Rockhold, of course, but I foresee a hangover of epic proportions, I'm not going to lie.
And now time for a few honourable mentions. Ian Freeman was a British trailblazer, best known for beating Frank Mir at UFC 38. Joanne Calderwood showed you can take the girl out of Scotland, but you can't take Scotland out the girl. Ronnie Pickering never fought in MMA, but that doesn't stop him from thinking he did.
Come on, who are you then?
Ronnie Pickering!
Who?
Ronnie Pickering!
Who?
Ronnie Pickering!
Who the fuck's that?
Yeah, me!
This is the INC, and thank you for watching.